Hi, I'm Bafoa, and as a huge fan of the Monster Prom series, I noticed there weren't really any tutorials for the Monster Prom art style, which I adore so much. So here are some tips and tricks that I've gotten from trying to replicate the Monster Prom art style. So, disclaimer, this isn't really about character design of how to make a cool Monster Prom OC that looks like it lives in the universe, and more so about trying to draw your OC in the Monster Prom art style. So, let's begin. Number 1, have a character. Personally, I find having a character reference sheet is really helpful, and having the color palette of your character is ideal. So you can just reference the sheet every time you want to draw your little guy. And after that, step 2, collect references. So the best way I found to replicate the Monster Prom art style is to actually collect character references from the game that were similar enough to my OC so I can observe how Monster Prom decides to draw specific textures and characteristics. So for my OC Siri, she is a cloud person, so conveniently one of the main romanceable characters from Monster Prom, Polly, fits her super well as my main reference for her. Secondly, it also helped me to just find a pose from the game that I thought fit her character, which I also pulled from the first game, which is the player character Vicky. And now that I have my references, step 3, drawing the character. And I actually spent a lot of time just perfecting the proportions of the character. I noticed that Monster Prom actually kind of has realistic body proportions where the characters are about 7 heads tall, so I had to make sure my character was tall enough because I initially drew her kind of squished. And another tip I have is the fandom wiki in the game itself is kind of like my best friend. Because personally, I would boot up the game and open up the gallery menu, specifically where the characters are, and go through all their outfits, expressions, and it's actually here where I find I can find more references for the essence of the character I want. You can always substitute the game if you don't have it by looking through the wiki for character images, and basically I found that collecting different parts of characters that I liked worked really well. So for example, in Road Trip, I actually found this group of party ghosts as a good reference for a series Cloud Hair, which I'll color in later. And you can even go through and find, oh, I like this character's eyes, and you can try to mimic that in your own drawing. So for example, with my character Siri, I actually took her ear design from the Dimensional Prince. So it's kind of like Frankensteining together your OC. And you can even take notes of different textures. Like Monster Prom has a specific way of drawing these goopy-like characters if you're thinking of making a slime person, or even how they draw fur. So it is just really helpful to keep collecting references from the game or the wiki for how Monster Prom interprets characteristics, which you can then draw from to make your own. Moving on from the importance of references, the line art was actually another thing that I spent a lot of time on. For the most part, the line art is kind of uniform, but it gets thicker at some edges and corners, so I try to do that as well. Some areas of the limbs are also kind of sharp. I think you can definitely notice it here in this old and new photo that I've been referencing, like Scott's jacket comes to a soft Dorito point instead of round in the past. You can also do this if you'd like to. I remember trying to fix the shapes in my character. And now, I think what really makes the Monster Prom art style is the shading and coloring. For colors, they use colors that are pretty saturated, so I had to avoid defaulting to the kind of muted tones that I noticed were in my art style. And most importantly, the shading. The shading is so iconic and distinct and ties everything together. Monster Prom actually just uses a lot of hard shading and edges in their style. Even though these are softer shapes, the shading is pretty pointy. And the shading is also pretty simple in the sense that you have your base color, you have your darker shade, which is mostly the pointy shadows, and finally a highlight, which can be shaped in a lot of ways. So it's up to you how you want to do that. I didn't record the clothing process, oops, so I'll just show you my final illustration of my character Siri. I love her so much, she's my scrunkly. I drew her in Art Fight 2024 this year. But anyway, I hope you found this helpful in your journey to try to replicate the Monster Prom art style, because I've always loved this game series so much and how they draw their characters. If you like what you see, maybe like and subscribe. I'm thinking of posting other art videos, so... Okay, bye-bye!